Hi and welcome back. It's December, a time of office parties, rich convivial meals and sugary treats. Now don't get me wrong, I'm all for revelling in delicious food. But wouldn't it be nice if this year your seasonal treats could be healthy as well as tasty? Today I want to show you one of my favourite winter treats. They're gingerbread cakes based on a traditional German recipe called Elisenkuchen, which are named after St. Elizabeth, the patron saint of bakers. They're not only delicious, they're also extremely nutritious. They contain walnuts, which are a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, hazelnuts and almonds and spices that are rich in antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds, citrus peel, which is thought to have anti-cancer properties, and dark chocolate, which is a great source of healthy polyphenols. As an added bonus, this recipe is free from wheat, dairy and yeast, making it suitable for people who can't tolerate these foods. Of course, these cakes are quite rich in calories, so they should be eaten in moderation, like all sweet treats. But because they're so nutritious and so filling, a little will go a long way, and you'll probably find that you won't want to eat more than 1 or maximum 2 anyway. You'll need 3 eggs, the finely grated zest of half a lemon, make sure it's an untreated organically grown lemon, 3 tablespoons of candied orange peel, again untreated and organic, a tablespoon of lemon juice, a heaped teaspoon of gingerbread spice mix and another one of cinnamon, and then 3 cups of nuts. I use walnuts, almonds and hazelnuts, about 3.5 ounces or 100 grams of each, and 4 tablespoons of honey. We're using acacia honey, which has a low glycemic index ranking. And if you like, you can add a few drops of natural almond essence. And to finish them off, to glaze the cookies at the end, 120 grams or 4 ounces of dark chocolate. We start by grinding the nuts. You can buy pre-ground nuts, but I find they taste much fresher when you grind them yourself. Put them in a blender. I usually start just with the almonds and hazelnuts because they're harder than the walnuts. I give them a whiz and then I add the walnuts. Now we add the walnuts and whiz again. When you finish blending the nuts, they should look roughly like this, like breadcrumbs. Always use nuts that have the skins still on them because the skins contain very powerful antioxidants that can protect our body's cells against cancerous changes. So don't use blanched or roasted nuts, always use raw, whole nuts with the skins still on. Next we break the eggs into a mixing bowl and then we add 4 tablespoons of honey. Depending how sweet you want it, you could get away with 3 possibly. There we go. I'm just going to be using 3. I think that'll probably be enough. And then with an electric whisk, we beat them until they turn into a light, frothy mixture. Once you have this lovely light yellow foamy mixture, you add the lemon juice, cinnamon, gingerbread spice mix, the orange peel. Gingerbread spice mix, by the way, contains equal quantities of ground cloves, ground ginger, ground nutmeg, and one more. Oh yes, ground aniseed. So if you can't find the spice mix ready-made, you can just grind them up yourself in a coffee grinder or buy ground spices and mix them up together. Now we put a tiny little bit of almond essence in. It's very powerful stuff, so go easy on it. And finally we tip in the nuts and we grate half an organic lemon zest over the lot. This is fantastic grater, microplane grater, which grates very, very fine little flakes of lemon zest and really just gives you the zest and its essential oils without the bitter pith that's underneath. So I warmly recommend that you invest in a grater like this. It's also great for ginger or for chocolate or parmesan. There we go. Now, some nuts left. And now we mix the whole thing up into a nice thick dough. This is what the dough will look like. Now cover it tightly and place it in the fridge for at least 2 hours, ideally overnight, so that the flavours can really infuse nicely. So the dough is spent a few hours in the fridge and now it's time to start baking. One ingredient I forgot to mention earlier, sorry, is a heaping teaspoon of baking powder, which goes in now. We don't want it to be sitting in the dough overnight because it'll just take away its leavening properties. So now we scatter in a teaspoon of baking powder and we mix it in with the dough that has been nicely infusing in the... I've lightly buttered an enamel baking tray. I don't use baking parchment or any non-stick cookware because they are thought to contain estrogenic compounds that can leach into the food that they come into contact with. And one thing we don't want to do is increase the estrogen burden in our bodies. So just a very old-fashioned enamel tray will do the job very nicely, especially if you butter it. Now, with a teaspoon, we pinch off a piece of dough and then we roll it roughly to the size of a walnut, pop it on the tray and press it down with the fingers. And just keep doing that until you've used up all the dough. When you've shaped the cookies, slide them into the oven that you've preheated to 320 degrees Fahrenheit or 160 Celsius and bake for 15-20 minutes until they're golden on top. Start checking after 15 minutes. So the cookies have been baked and cooled on a wire rack. So now we're just going to prepare the chocolate glaze. To do that, just break chocolate coarsely into a metal bowl. A glass bowl would do as well, but metal speeds things up a bit. Don't have to be very small pieces. I'm using 80% cocoa content chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the healthier it is for you. If you're not used to having really dark chocolate, start with 65 or 70 and work your way up, and you will find that your taste buds can actually get used to darker chocolate, and after a while you'll find the sweeter stuff really cloyingly unpleasant. Now, once you've broken the chocolate into your bowl, pop it in a larger bowl that you filled with just boiled water. This is the best way of melting chocolate. It never burns this way, but you do have to be very careful not to get any of the hot water into the chocolate because that will cause it to seize up instantly. So just 2 minutes later, the chocolate's become completely melted and nice and runny. So, with a pastry brush, just dip it lightly into the chocolate and pat it onto the cookies. If it's a bit too runny, let the chocolate cool for a few minutes. There you go, until they're fairly fully covered. Now you can either leave them plain, or what I like to do as well is to scatter a few sort of almond slivers on there, or you can make patterns with almond slivers. You can really do whatever you fancy. There you go. This recipe is not in my book, Zest for Life, but if you'd like a copy of the recipe, I'd be very happy to send it to you by email if you contact me via the website www.zestforlifediet.com and click on the author tab. There you will find an email form that you can send to me. I also welcome feedback if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, so do get in touch. Thanks very much.